friends are since.
Hello! Polyend have been adding a whole bunch of new features to the tracker, as well as fixing a bunch of bugs. And I have been making a few videos showing off some of these features because some people may not like to install beta firmware, which is the only way you can get a hold of the new features for now, until of course they become part of an official release, if they do. So for this one, I wanted to show you an effect that they've added called the slide effect. Now, in some ways, this is pretty boring. It's not exactly as exciting as the arpeggiator effect or as bizarre as the horizontal scrolling mode, but I do think it's worth having a look at, especially because it's kind of an integral feature of other tracker software, and it's cool to see that it's been implemented at last. The usual caveats apply. First of all, I have tried to dust this screen, but if you see some particles of dust, I apologise. My Swiffer somehow can't grab everything, at least not when we're talking about daylight coming in the window. The other thing I have to say is that if you hear any weird noises, it's because we're in the middle of the Scottish summer, which of course means lots of rain and wind, and it's currently battering the window that I'm sat next to, so that's what that is. Also, the final thing is this is beta firmware. It's subject to change and maybe even removal depending on how things go. So don't rely on these features as if they're going to be here in this form forever, because it may change. So to explain the slide effect, what we have to do first is understand what the other effects are in there. There's an effect in the kind of stable firmware releases called glide. Now, if you're unsure of what glide is, it's essentially a portamento. So it's how long it slides or the note graduates to the next note in the sequence. And to demonstrate how that works in practice or what that sounds like, I've just got a basic kind of sawtooth wave here playing a very basic pattern, and then I'll add in the glide effect and you can see the effect it has. So that's our basic pattern. Now, if we add in the glide effect, you'll see hopefully on each note step, I've added in a glide of a different value. The lower the values, the quicker the glide or the portamento, the longer or the greater the value, the longer it takes. And I think it's up to 15 seconds, maybe. Let me find it and I'll confirm. Yes, so it's up to 15 seconds. So that's the glide. And here's what it sounds like with the glide. Pretty cool. Now, there's a few limitations with glide. Specifically, you can only glide in the direction of the following note. So that means that you can't bend down to go up to a higher note, essentially. This is something that's used a lot in chiptune music, for example. You would do quick pitch bends or use a pitch bend in the opposite direction to make things more interesting. The other thing that you can't do with the glide function is you can't have the glide start halfway through the pattern, for example. By that I mean the glide has to be on the same line as the note that you're gliding from. So if I show you here, what I've done is I've added in a glide halfway between the two notes, and what I would like to hear is the note plays normally until it hits this line, and then it should glide to the next note, but it doesn't work that way because of how it's been implemented. You can see that essentially the ones that are in between the notes are ignored, and the only one that's actually getting triggered is this one, which is on the same line. And that's a bit of a shame, and this was one of the limitations of the glide function that a lot of people were, I'm not unhappy with, I would say, but probably unhappy. Anyway, so this is where the slide effect comes in, because it gives you a lot more control over this. Not only does it allow you to pitch bend essentially in both directions, so you can go up or down, but it also lets you place the pitch bend or the slide, to use their terminology, anywhere in the effects lane. So I'll show you, I've got another pattern that I created. As you can see, there are notes here which have no bend on them at all or no slide on them. And if you watch, what will happen is the slide will start halfway between these notes and you'll hear that going on. So there you get an idea of how it can help enhance your tracks in a much more rhythmical way, rather than just being stuck with, the glide that can only go from note to note. Now, on this one, I'm only gliding up the way, I believe, or maybe down the way, I can't remember now. Yeah, slide up. And the way it works, the way they've implemented the slide effect is it's got two different commands. So one is for sliding up and one is for sliding down, F and J respectively. And you can slide up in steps, so 1/16 of a semitone per number, and it's from 0 to 255 values. So that gives you quite a lot of gradation over the slides as well. And it means, as I've mentioned already, that you get a whole load more control. So let's try another pattern. Oh, I don't have another pattern, it's just the same one. Let's change some of these to, stay in the same effect line. Let's change some of them to J, so that'll be slide down, and you'll hear what I mean. The other thing I guess you could do is slide up and then slide down. I've not tried that yet. Now, that's not the most musical of examples, but you get the idea of how it works at least. So I've created a pattern that is just, it's just straight up. It's got drums on here and it's just got a basic melody. And then what I've done is I've created it without any slides and then with some slides. So here it is without slides. A very LSDJ-esque thing, or at least something I would write in LSDJ with my lack of skills. So that's fine, it's alright, it's not a magical tune or anything like that, but how do you jazz it up and make it a wee bit more interesting? Slides. So I've created the pattern by throwing in some slides. I haven't thought too much about this, so don't judge me on the musical merit, but just think about what you could do better. So you get the idea, and you can see how you can use the slides to give your melodies a whole load more dynamics. And it's not just melody you can do this to, you can start to really get creative and screw up things like applying the slides to samples or to kick sounds or to percussion. And that's one of the most powerful things about trackers, is the ability to add effects on each step. And so I'm really excited to see that Polyend have included a slide function, and hopefully that's useful to you in some way. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.